Hello and welcome. Picture yourself standing at the very edge of the known world, where civilization thins to nothing more than a whisper against the howling wind, where the warmth of hearth fires feels like a distant memory, even when you are sitting beside them. You are about to journey into a place that has broken the spirits of countless explorers. A land so hostile that merely surviving another day is considered an act of defiance. This is Icewind Dale, the northernmost explored region in all of Faerun. And you are about to discover why those who call it home are either the bravest souls you will ever meet, or perhaps the most foolish. Icewind Dale sprawls across 1,000 square miles of Arctic tundra in the Frozenfar region of the distant north. A vast expanse where the world seems to end in sheets of ice and horizons that blur into white nothingness. When you look at maps of Faerun in southern libraries, warm and safe in civilized lands, you might see Icewind Dale marked at the very top, a small notation that barely hints at the enormity of what exists there. But to understand this place, you cannot rely on maps drawn by cartographers who have never felt the bite of a northern winter. You must experience it through the eyes of those who walk its frozen ground every single day. The Dale itself is imprisoned by natural barriers on all sides, a bowl of ice and wind, hemmed in by forces older than memory. To the south rises the spine of the world, those towering peaks that form an almost impenetrable wall between the frozen north and the more temperate lands beyond. These mountains are among the highest in all of Faerun, their summits perpetually crowned with snow and ice, their passes blocked for 8 or 9 months out of every year. To the east stands the Regged Glacier, a massive wall of ancient ice that rises like a prison barrier, its face sheer and forbidding. And to the north and west churns the sea of moving ice, a treacherous expanse of frigid waters choked with icebergs that grind against each other in an endless tumult, like winter grinding its teeth in anticipation of its next freezing assault. Between these formidable obstacles lies windswept tundra, a desolate plain dotted with the occasional small forest or stand of trees. When you first set eyes upon Icewind Dale, you might be struck by the terrible beauty of it. The landscape possesses a stark, crystalline quality that can take your breath away, quite literally, if you are not careful. The air here is so cold that drawing it into your lungs can feel like swallowing shards of glass. On clear days, which are blessedly rare, the sun reflects off the endless snow with a brilliance that can blind you if you are foolish enough to travel without protection for your eyes. The light bounces from ice crystal to ice crystal, creating a glittering field that stretches as far as you can see, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. But you must understand something crucial about this land. The sun never rises far above the horizon, even at the height of summer. And the height of summer is a fleeting thing. Winter here is long and ruthless, stretching across most of the year with its iron grip. The people here do not measure seasons as you might know them in gentler climes. Instead, They speak of gradations of cold, of survival measured in stores of food and fuel, of counting the days until the brief respite of summer arrives. The climate of Icewind Dale is defined by one overwhelming reality. It is almost always winter. In the height of summer, when the sun barely sets below the horizon for weeks at a time, temperatures might climb just above freezing, hovering between barely above the point where ice begins to melt, and a temperature you might consider pleasantly cool in southern lands. But this warmth, such as it is, lasts only briefly. For most of the year, temperatures remain well below freezing, ranging from just below the melting point down to depths that can kill an unprepared traveler in minutes. In the depths of winter, the cold becomes truly lethal, plunging to temperatures where exposed flesh freezes solid in mere moments, where metal becomes brittle enough to shatter, where even the most carefully tended fires struggle to provide warmth. The wind makes everything worse. Cold winds blow down from the regged glacier, sweeping from east to west across the tundra all year round. In winter, these winds can lower the already frigid temperatures even further, making the air feel like knives against your skin. The people of the Dale have many names for these winds, each describing a particular mood and danger. There is the screaming wind that howls across the open tundra, the knife wind that cuts through even the thickest firs, and the dead wind that comes in the deepest winter, so cold that it seems to steal the very life from your body. But clear days are not the norm in Icewind Dale. More often, you will find yourself surrounded by snow and blizzard, storms that descend without warning and transform the world into a white void where you cannot see your own hands in front of your face. Storms, particularly snowstorms, are a frequent occurrence all year round, even in summer. In winter, the wind speeds grow high enough to flatten poorly constructed buildings, to bury settlements beneath drifts of snow, to cut off all travel for days at a time. More than one foolhardy soul has frozen to death mere yards from safety, lost in a whiteout that made navigation impossible. Yet within this frozen hell, there are features that break the monotony of the endless tundra. The most dominant are the three great lakes that lie at the heart of Icewind Dale: Mare Dualden, Lac Dinnesher, and Redwaters. These lakes are fed by rivers that wind down from the regged glacier, carrying meltwater through the dale, while other rivers drain south and west toward the sea. The most significant of these waterways is the Shingarn River, which marks a boundary in the land and in the lives of those who inhabit this frozen realm. Mare Dualden is the largest and deepest of the three lakes, sheltered from the worst winds of the regged glacier by a lone mountain called Kelvin's Cairn. This sheltering effect makes the waters of Mare Dualden calmer than the other lakes, its temperatures slightly higher. On clear days, the sight of Mare Dualden can be almost tranquil, with otters playing along its shores and birds wheeling overhead. Clam beds litter the sandbanks formed by the annual spring floods. But do not let this beauty fool you. The lake is frozen solid for most of the year, its surface becoming a highway for sleds and skaters, but also treacherous with pressure ridges that can form without warning and thin spots that can send the unwary plunging into waters cold enough to kill in moments. Lac Dinnesher lies to the east and south of Kelvin's Cairn, more exposed to the relentless winds that sweep down from the glacier. Its waters are choppier, colder, less forgiving than those of Mare Dualden. Between Kelvin's Cairn and Lac Dinnesher runs Icewind Pass, a natural causeway worn smooth by thousands of years of wind and ice, and the ancient migrations of peoples long established in this land. And to the north lies Redwaters, named for the peculiar reddish tint of its waters, a color that has inspired countless legends about what might lie beneath its surface. These lakes are frozen solid for most of the year, but they are also the lifeblood of Icewind Dale. They are home to the knucklehead trout, a peculiar fish found nowhere else in the world. These trout grow to enormous sizes, some weighing as much as 100 pounds, and they possess a unique quality: a hard, bony knob in their skulls that can be carved and polished into a substance resembling ivory. This scrimshaw has value in southern markets, enough value that people are willing to endure the hardships of the Dale to harvest it. In spring, salmon swim upriver to spawn in these lakes, and the waters teem with char as well. The fishing industry drives much of the economy of the settlements that cling to these shores, with communities competing fiercely for the best fishing spots. Around these lakes, the settlements of 10 towns cluster, each one a small fortress of survival against the vastness of the frozen landscape. But there is something peculiar about the region where these towns sit, something that makes survival here just barely possible. The 10 towns region is slightly warmer than the surrounding tundra, lying atop a region of volcanic activity deep beneath the earth. This geothermal warmth keeps the land and the lakes unfrozen for a few days longer than the surrounding tundra. The differences are barely noticeable, perhaps only a degree or two, but in a land where every fraction of warmth means the difference between life and death, this slight advantage is everything. At the heart of this warmer zone rises Kelvin's Cairn, a lone mountain that dominates the landscape between Mare Dualden and Lac Dinnesher. The mountain stands alone on the tundra, visible for miles in every direction, a landmark and a symbol for all who live in its shadow. Some scholars have suggested that the peak might be a dormant volcano that has not erupted in many millennia, which would explain the geothermal warmth that radiates from deep beneath the surrounding region. Whether this theory holds truth or not, the warmth is real and measurable, keeping the land and lakes unfrozen for precious days longer than the surrounding tundra. Ancient eruptions, if they occurred, may have carved the valleys and caves that mark the mountain slopes, creating the perfect environment for those who would make their homes within. Legends surround Kelvin's Cairn, stories passed down through generations. Some speak of a great battle fought here in ages past, of frost giants who once ruled the Dale, and were defeated by the ancestors of the regged barbarians. Others whisper of treasures buried deep within the mountain, or of passages that lead down into darkness. And indeed, there are dwarves who make their homes within Kelvin's cairn, their entrance marked by thick iron doors set deep into a cleft in the mountainside. These dwarves mine and forge, and live their lives in the warmth of the mountain's heart, venturing out only when necessary to trade with the human settlements. To the south of Kelvin's cairn extends a valley called Dwarven Valley, leading from the lower slopes of the mountain toward the towering heights of the spine of the world. This valley provides some shelter from the worst winds, and the dwarves guard it jealously, for it is their connection to the wider world and to the mines they work in the mountain's depths. The terrain of Icewind Dale varies more than you might expect from what appears to be an endless flat wasteland. Yes, there is the tundra, vast expanses of broken ground covered in scrub grass and stunted bushes. This is the barbarian tundra, the lands outside the relative warmth of 10 towns, roughly north of the Shingarn River. In winter, this land is entirely covered in a blanket of frozen snow, trackless and deadly. In spring, when the snow melts, it gives way to an icy bog, treacherous in entirely different ways. Nothing grows taller than the low, scrubby vegetation that somehow clings to life beneath the snow. But this thin covering provides sustenance for the herds of reindeer that migrate across the tundra. And where the reindeer go, predators follow. On the western shore of Mare Dualden, north of where the settlement of Bremen sits, there is a small collection of pine trees and laurel plants growing in and around a depression in the land. This is the Farrowood, a rare patch of green in a world of white. The pine and laurel growths are close together, making the wood unusually warm but difficult to move through. Within this wood stands a circle of stones called the Summer Circle, a place of old magic and older rituals. The regged glacier itself dominates the eastern reaches of Icewind Dale, a massive wall of ice that creeps slowly but inexorably across the land. This is no ordinary glacier. It is ancient beyond reckoning, a remnant of ages past when the entire world was locked in winter's grip. The glacier stands hundreds of feet tall, its face a sheer cliff of blue-white ice marked with crevasses and ice falls. The sound it makes is something you will never forget if you camp near it. A constant groaning and cracking as the ice shifts and moves, like the breathing of some primordial entity. Beneath the glacier, legends speak of caverns and passages carved by ancient waters, now frozen into strange formations. Some of these passages are home to creatures perfectly adapted to the eternal cold. White dragons make their lairs in the deepest caves, hoarding treasures and hunting across the tundra. And there are the Remorhaz, terrible worm-like beasts as large as giants, their bodies generating such intense heat that they can melt through solid ice as easily as you might walk through morning mist. These creatures burrow through the glacier and beneath the tundra, rising without warning to devour anything unlucky enough to be above them when they surface. Other creatures have adapted to this frozen realm in their own ways. Hoar foxes with pure white fur stalk the tundra, some of them possessing breath weapons that can freeze their prey solid. Polar bears roam the ice, massive predators that fear nothing. Seals and walruses haul themselves onto ice floes in the sea of moving ice to rest and bear their young. Wolves hunt in packs, their howls echoing across the empty spaces, and in the darkest places, in the depths of the glacier and the caves beneath the mountains. Things move that have no names in any human tongue. The spine of the world forms the southern barrier of Icewind Dale, peaks that scrape the sky and hold back both invaders and escape routes in equal measure. These mountains serve as both protection and prison for the Dale, blocking some weather systems, but also trapping the cold air that spills down from the north and east. The few passes through the spine are treacherous, often blocked by snow for most of the year. The most notable leads south toward Luskan and the more civilized lands beyond. A journey that even in the best conditions takes weeks and requires more courage than sense. Within the spine itself, countless valleys and ravines hide secrets both wondrous and terrible. Ancient ruins dot the mountainsides, remnants of civilizations that existed long before humans ever ventured this far north. Some speak of giant kingdoms that once flourished here when the world was young, their mighty halls now buried beneath millennia of ice and snow. The Empire of Astoria, they say, once ruled these peaks, when giants were the masters of the world and smaller races cowered before them. Now only ruins remain, and the descendants of those giants are savage creatures that raid down from the mountains, barely shadows of their ancestors' glory. There are also caves and crevasses that descend into the Underdark, that nightmare realm beneath the world where things that should not exist in any sane reality make their homes. Few venture into those depths willingly, and fewer still return to speak of what they found there. The land plays tricks on those unused to its nature. Distances become deceptive across the flat tundra, where there are few landmarks to provide scale. What appears to be an hour's walk might take 4 or 5 hours. The quality of light, especially during the long twilight of winter, when the sun barely rises above the horizon, can make judging time and distance nearly impossible. Travelers have been known to wander in circles, convinced they are heading toward safety, when in fact they are walking deeper into the wilderness. Yet, for all its hostility, Icewind Dale possesses an abundance of space and freedom that draws certain souls. This is a frontier, a place where you can disappear if you want to, where your past does not matter as much as your ability to survive the present. Many who come to the Dale are running from something: debts, crimes, failed lives in civilized lands. Here, no one asks too many questions. If you can pull your weight, if you can contribute to the community's survival, then you are welcome regardless of where you came from or what you might have done. The isolation of Icewind Dale is both curse and blessing. The difficulty of the journey here, and the even greater difficulty of surviving once you arrive, means that the Dale sees few visitors. Merchants make the journey only in the summer months, bringing goods that cannot be produced locally, and taking away fish scrimshaw and dwarven crafts. News from the outside world arrives late and often distorted. What is happening in Waterdeep or Baldur's Gate feels as distant and unreal as fairy tales. The Dale exists in its own bubble, its own reality shaped entirely by the immediate needs of survival. This isolation also means that when danger comes to Icewind Dale, there is no one to call for help. No armies will march north to save the settlements. No powerful wizards will teleport in to solve the problems. The people here are on their own, forced to deal with whatever threatens them using only their own resources and courage. This has bred a particular kind of resilience in the population, a toughness that goes beyond mere physical hardiness. It is a mental and spiritual strength, the ability to face overwhelming odds and still find the will to go on. As you stand here in your mind's eye, looking out across the frozen expanse of Icewind Dale, you must understand that everything you will learn about this place flows from the nature of the land itself. The cultures that have developed here, the conflicts that have erupted, the legends and heroes that have emerged, all are shaped by the fundamental reality of existence in this frozen frontier. This is not a land that forgives mistakes. It does not offer second chances. It demands everything from those who would call it home, and it shapes them into something harder, colder, and perhaps more purely alive than people in gentler lands could ever understand. The sun is setting now, such as it sets in this place where the line between day and night can blur into endless twilight. The temperature is dropping rapidly, as it always does when the sun's feeble warmth withdraws. The wind is picking up, carrying with it the promise of snow. If you were truly here, you would need to seek shelter soon, to find warmth and safety before the night fully arrives. But your journey is just beginning, and there is so much more you need to understand about Icewind Dale and the peoples who have made it their home against all reason and logic. Section 2. The peoples of the Dale, cultures and communities. Now that you understand the land itself, the frozen stage upon which all life in Icewind Dale must perform its daily struggle for survival, you need to meet the actors in this eternal drama. The peoples of the Dale are as harsh and unforgiving as the landscape that shapes them. Yet they are also capable of surprising warmth, loyalty, and courage. 3 distinct cultures call this frozen waste home, and understanding them is essential to understanding the soul of Icewind Dale itself. The most visible of these are the settlers of 10 towns, that loose confederation of fishing villages and trading posts scattered around the 3 Great Lakes. But before we delve into the individual character of each settlement, you must understand how this unlikely collection of communities came to exist in the first place. So far from civilization, in a land that seems determined to kill anyone foolish enough to linger. The story begins over 400 years ago, in the 11th century of Dale reckoning, when the first explorers ventured north from Cormer and other southern lands. Among these early pioneers was the Dynev family, nobles from Cormer who sought something the crowded cities of the south could no longer provide. Perhaps they sought freedom or riches, or simply the chance to carve out their own destiny far from the politics and restrictions of established kingdoms. Whatever their reasons, they traveled north through the spine of the world and established the first permanent settlement on the shores of Lac Dinnesher. This original settlement would eventually become Caerdineville, a fortified town built around a castle that the Dynev family constructed to protect themselves from the hostile environment and the dangers that lurked in the frozen wilderness. But they were not alone for long. Word spread south of knucklehead trout, those peculiar fish whose bony skulls could be carved into valuable scrimshaw. Word spread of mineral wealth in the mountains, of gemstones and precious metals waiting to be claimed by those brave or desperate enough to seek them. And so they came, the adventurers and the outcasts, the fortune seekers and the fugitives, each bringing their own reasons for venturing into the frozen north. One by one, the settlements sprang up around the lakes. Some started as nothing more than fishing camps, temporary shelters used by those brave enough to harvest the knucklehead trout during the brief fishing season. Others began as waypoints for traders or mountain climbers attempting to traverse the spine of the world. But as people continued to dwell in these places, as they weathered their first winters and discovered they could survive here if they were tough enough and clever enough, the camps became villages, and the villages grew into towns. The hostile creatures of Icewind Dale, the frost giants, and the goblinoids and the predators, both natural and supernatural, necessitated the building of walls and fortifications. The settlers learned quickly that survival here required more than just enduring the cold. It required cooperation, shared resources, and the ability to defend what you had built. And so the towns fortified themselves, each one becoming a small fortress against the wilderness. Bryn Shander was the first among these settlements to truly flourish, positioned at the crossroads of the Dale, elevated on a hill that provided both defense and visibility. Unlike the other towns, Bryn Shander was not built on the shores of a lake. It did not need to be. Its position made it the natural hub for trade between the fishing villages and the outside world, between the dwarven forges of Kelvin's cairn and the merchants who made the dangerous journey north from Luskan. Bryn Shander grew larger than its neighbors, its population swelling to over 1,000 souls at times, its walls higher and stronger, its defenses more formidable. You would recognize Bryn Shander as the closest thing to civilization Icewind Dale has to offer. Its streets, while still rough and icy, are wider than those of other towns. Its buildings are sturdier, some even boasting multiple stories and luxuries unheard of in the smaller settlements. Here you might find an inn with actual beds, and hot meals, shops selling goods imported from the south, even the occasional magical item or scroll for sale. The people of Bryn Shander are slightly less weathered than their counterparts in the fishing villages, slightly more welcoming to strangers, because trade is their lifeblood, and they understand that isolating themselves would mean economic death. The town is governed by a speaker, elected by the populace to represent their interests, and to serve as their voice in the Council of 10 Towns, that loose assembly where the speakers of all the settlements gather to discuss matters affecting the Dale as a whole. This council has no real authority to enforce its decisions, no army to compel compliance, but it provides a forum for cooperation and conflict resolution that has kept the towns from descending into open warfare with each other, even when competition for fishing grounds or trade routes grows fierce. Surrounding Bryn Shander, scattered around the shores of the 3 Great Lakes, are the other 9 towns, each with its own character, its own history, its own way of surviving in this harsh land. Targos, on the southern shore of Mare Dualden, was once the largest and most prominent settlement before Bryn Shander surpassed it. The people of Targos are proud of their town's history, proud of their fishing fleet, which is the largest and most skilled in all the Dale. They are practical, no-nonsense folk who have little patience for pretension or frivolity. Their town is protected by sturdy wooden walls that have withstood countless attacks from goblinoids and worse, and they maintain those walls with the same grim determination they bring to everything else in their lives. Bremen sits at the western edge of Mare Dualden, where the lake meets the Shingarn River. This town has a dual economy, supplementing its fishing income with mining and prospecting along the river. The spring floods sometimes carry gold and treasures down from the mountains, and the people of Bremen have learned to sift through the debris left behind when the waters recede. Bremen was once ruled by a king from the barbarian elk tribe, a unique arrangement that speaks to the complex relationships between the settled folk and the nomadic peoples of the tundra. North of Bremen, tucked into the forest that gives it its name, lies Lonely Wood. This is the northernmost of the 10 towns, the most isolated, the most dangerous, and perhaps paradoxically, one of the most vibrant. Lonelywood has no walls, yet it thrives despite regular raids from the wilderness. The people here have forged a strong sense of community born from shared danger, and they welcome newcomers without asking too many questions about their pasts. This makes Lonelywood the destination of choice for those truly running from something, those who need to disappear completely. The town also profits from its proximity to the Lonelywood Forest, the only substantial timber source in the Dale, and lumber is almost as valuable as fish scrimshaw in these parts. On the eastern shore of Lac, Dineshire sit 2 towns with a long and bitter rivalry, Caerdineville and Caerconnig. Caerdineville, as you now know, was founded by the Dynev family and built around their castle. The original population was wiped out in an orcish siege generations ago, but the town was retaken and rebuilt by new settlers who maintained its name and its fortifications. Caer Konig, despite its name suggesting royalty, is a smaller settlement that shares fishing waters with Caerdineville. The two towns are frequently at odds over fishing rights, each claiming the best spots on the lake, and their speakers often clash in the Council of 10 Towns. Easthaven, also on Lac Dinnesher, grew from a small shanty town into one of the largest settlements after the Eastway Trade Road was paved, connecting it to Bryn Shander and allowing it to flourish as both a fishing village and a trade hub. Easthaven has seen its share of troubles over the centuries. Devils once attempted to open a portal to the 9 hells beneath a local chapel. Orcish invasions have been repelled from its shores. The town even produced a legendary magical weapon called the Defender of Easthaven, a powerful flail that has become part of the settlement's identity. To the south, where Lac Dinnesher flows toward more distant waters, you would find Tourmaline, a town known for its gem mining operations and its particularly skilled crafters who work both stone and bone into beautiful objects. Dugan's Hole, the smallest of the 10 towns, sits on Lake Redwaters and consists of little more than a handful of houses and 2 small piers. It is notable mainly for its proximity to the 20 Stones of Thrune, a ring of standing stones with a dark reputation. Goodmead, also on Redwaters, has carved out a unique niche for itself. Too small to compete with the larger towns in fishing, Goodmead instead focuses on producing the finest mead in all the north. The honey wine they brew has become famous enough that Bryn Shander merchants eagerly buy up every barrel, selling it south for substantial profits. The master brewer who leads Goodmead is beloved by the town's inhabitants, and the warm, sweet smell of fermenting honey provides a pleasant contrast to the usual sense of fish and cold stone that dominate the other settlements. The people who inhabit these 10 towns are a particular breed. They are survivors, every one of them, whether they were born here or came north seeking fortune or escape. Life in the settlements revolves around the rhythm of the fishing season, the comings and goings of the merchant caravans in summer, and the long, dark winters when each town must rely entirely on its stored provisions and the strength of its community bonds. During the brief summer months, the lakes thaw and the fishing fleets venture out onto the waters, setting nets and lines for the precious knucklehead trout. The competition for the best fishing spots can be fierce, sometimes erupting into violence between crews from rival towns. But mostly, the competition remains economic, each town trying to harvest more fish, produce more scrimshaw, attract more merchants willing to pay top prices for their goods. When winter closes in and the lakes freeze solid, a different kind of fishing begins. Ice fishermen drill holes through the thick ice, sitting for hours in the bitter cold, waiting for a trout to take the bait. It is miserable work, but the knucklehead trout remain active beneath the ice, and the need for income does not stop just because the weather becomes deadly. Other townsfolk turn to indoor occupations, carving scrimshaw from the trout heads harvested earlier, repairing fishing nets and boats, crafting the goods that will be needed when spring returns. But the people of 10 towns are not the only inhabitants of Icewind Dale. Beyond the relative safety of the town walls, across the tundra north of the Shingarn River, roam the regged barbarians, the tribes who have called this frozen land home for far longer than any southern settler. The regged are divided into 4 major tribes, each named for the totem animal they revere: the tribe of the bear, the tribe of the elk, the tribe of the tiger, and the tribe of the wolf. These tribes are nomadic, following the migrations of the reindeer herds that sustain them. Moving with the seasons across territories they have claimed as their own for countless generations. They live in hide tents that can be erected and dismantled quickly, carrying everything they own on sleds pulled by dogs or reindeer. To the settled folk of 10 towns, the regged often appear savage and unpredictable. The tribes have a long history of raiding the settlements, swooping down from the tundra to steal supplies, livestock, and anything else they can carry away. But to understand the regged, you must see the world through their eyes. They view the 10 towns' settlers as invaders, outsiders who came north and claimed the best fishing grounds, who built their walls on land that the tribes had ranged across for millennia. The raids are not mindless violence, but a form of resistance, a way of asserting their claim to this land and taking back what they believe is rightfully theirs. Each tribe has its own territory, its own hunting grounds, its own sacred sites. The tribe of the elk roams the western reaches of the tundra, their warriors known for their endurance and their ability to run for hours across the frozen waste without tiring. The tribe of the bear claims the northern territories closest to the sea of moving ice, their people as strong and fierce as the white bears they revere. The tribe of the tiger hunts the eastern lands near the regged glacier, their warriors moving with silent grace even across crunching snow. And the tribe of the wolf ranges across the central tundra, their hunters working together with the coordination and loyalty that wolves bring to the pack hunt. The regged live hard lives, even harder in some ways than the settled folk. They have no walls to shelter behind, no stored provisions beyond what they can carry. They must hunt constantly, following the reindeer herds, fishing through ice holes in winter, gathering what few plants grow on the tundra during the brief summer. They must defend themselves not just from rival tribes, but from the creatures of the dale, frost giants, yeti, wolves, and worse. Weakness means death, and so the regged have no tolerance for weakness. Their children learn to hunt and fight almost as soon as they can walk. Their elders are revered for surviving long enough to accumulate wisdom. But when age makes them a burden to the tribe, they often choose to walk out into the tundra alone, giving their lives to the land that shaped them. Yet the regged are not merely warriors and hunters. They have their own rich culture, their own traditions and songs and stories. They worship nature spirits and totemic powers, their shamans communing with the primal forces of ice and wind. They have laws and codes of honor that bind them as surely as any southern kingdom's legal system. A regged warrior's word is sacred, and breaking an oath is considered a fate worse than death. Over the centuries, the relationship between the regged tribes and 10 towns has evolved from pure hostility to something more complex. There have been periods of open warfare, times when the tribes united and attempted to drive the settlers back south. But there have also been periods of trade and cooperation, times when individual tribesmen have even settled in the towns, bringing their skills and strength to the communities. Some towns, like Bremen and Caerconnig, have been ruled by kings chosen from the barbarian tribes, a testament to the blending of cultures that can occur when survival demands cooperation. The third major culture in Icewind Dale dwells beneath the surface, in the warm halls carved into the heart of Kelvin's Cairn. These are the dwarves of Clan Battlehammer, and their story is intertwined with the land in ways that predate even the regged tribes. The dwarves came to Kelvin's Cairn long ago, drawn by the mountain's promise of mineral wealth and by the geothermal warmth that makes it uniquely suited for dwarven habitation in this frozen realm. Within the mountain, they carved their halls, following veins of mithril and gems deep into the stone. They built forges heated by volcanic vents, workshops where they could practice their crafts in comfort, despite the frozen wasteland mere feet of stone away. Clan Battlehammer is ruled by a king, a position that has been passed down through generations of the same family. The dwarves maintain strict traditions, valuing honor, craftsmanship, and loyalty to clan above all else. They are skilled miners and even more skilled smiths, creating weapons and armor of exceptional quality that are prized throughout the north. The iron and steel that flows from the forges of Clan Battlehammer helps arm the people of 10 towns, while the gems and precious metals they mine are traded for goods the dwarves cannot produce themselves. The relationship between the dwarves and the human settlements is generally cordial, based on mutual economic benefit. The dwarves trade their metalwork and gems for food, ale, and other supplies. They occasionally emerge from their mountain home to travel to Bryn Shander or other towns, their presence always notable for the fine quality of the goods they bring to market. But the dwarves also maintain their distance, preferring the company of their own kind, comfortable in their underground halls in ways that surface dwellers can never truly understand. In Dwarven Valley, that sheltered approach to Kelvin's Cairn, some dwarves have established outposts and guard stations, watching over the routes that lead to and from their mountain home. These valley dwarves interact more frequently with humans and serve as intermediaries between the isolated clan within the mountain and the wider world of Icewind Dale. These three cultures exist in a delicate balance, each dependent on the others in ways they might not always acknowledge. The people of 10 towns need the dwarven metalwork and the knowledge that Clan Battlehammer's warriors might aid them if a truly catastrophic threat emerges. The Regged tribes, despite their raids and their resentment of the settlers, have come to rely on trade with the towns for goods they cannot produce themselves. Metal tools, certain types of food, and the exotic luxuries that occasionally make their way north from southern lands. And the dwarves, isolated in their mountain fastness, need the food and other supplies that only trade with the surface folk can provide. But this balance is fragile. Always one bad winter or one major conflict away from shattering completely. When food grows scarce, when the fishing fails or the reindeer migrations change their patterns, tensions rise. Raids increase, accusations fly, and the delicate web of cooperation threatens to unravel. It is during these times that leaders matter most, that the speakers of 10 towns, and the chiefs of the Regged tribes, and the king of Clan Battlehammer must find ways to preserve the peace and prevent total war. As you imagine yourself here, perhaps standing in the market square of Bryn Shander, watching the diverse peoples of the Dale go about their business, you begin to understand that Icewind Dale is not just a place. It is a crucible where different cultures collide and are forged into something new. The settled folk learn hardiness from the Regged and appreciation for the land's harsh beauty. The Regged adopt some tools and techniques from the settlers, blending old ways with new innovations. The dwarves, watching from their mountain, sometimes venture forth to forge friendships and alliances that transcend the barriers of culture and species. But always underlying everything is the awareness that survival here is never guaranteed, that the land itself is the true enemy, and that any conflict between the peoples of the Dale only aids that enemy. This knowledge, shared by all who call Icewind Dale home, is perhaps the strongest force holding the fragile peace together. Because when the next blizzard strikes, when the next threat emerges from the frozen wilderness, when the next crisis threatens to destroy everything they have built, these diverse peoples will need each other. And deep down, beneath the pride and the ancient grudges and the cultural differences, they all know it. Section 3. Divine powers and dark forces, gods and magic. You cannot understand Icewind Dale without understanding the forces that shape it beyond the merely physical. This is a land where the divine and the profane press close against the mortal world, where gods walk in blizzards and ancient magics sleep beneath the ice. The spiritual landscape of the Dale is as harsh and unforgiving as its physical terrain, dominated by powers that demand sacrifice and offer little comfort in return. Above all other divine forces in Icewind Dale, one goddess reigns supreme, her presence felt in every freezing gust of wind, every blizzard that descends without warning, every soul claimed by the cold. She is Auril, the Frostmaiden, the queen of air and darkness, the Ice Dawn. She is winter personified, cruel and capricious, beautiful and merciless. To speak her name in Icewind Dale is to invoke a power that might be listening, that might turn her attention upon you. and that attention is never something you want to receive. Oral is not a goddess who loves her worshippers. She does not offer them comfort or hope or the promise of paradise after death. She is a goddess of cruelty, of survival of the fittest taken to its most extreme conclusion. She delights in testing mortals, in pushing them to the very edge of endurance, and then pushing them further. Her storms strike without warning, burying entire camps beneath snow, freezing travelers mere miles from safety. Her frosts blight crops that should be hardy enough to survive. Her winds tear roofs from buildings that have stood for generations. And through it all, she watches with eyes like chips of ice, utterly indifferent to the suffering she causes. Yet despite her cruelty, or perhaps because of it, Oral is widely worshipped throughout Icewind Dale. The people here understand that she is the dominant force in their lives, more powerful than any mortal ruler, more influential than any other deity. They make offerings to her not out of love, but out of fear and desperate hope that their sacrifices might turn her attention elsewhere, might spare them from the worst of her wrath. In the depths of winter, when the cold grows truly deadly, you would see families leaving food outside their doors as offerings to the Frostmaiden. Hunters pour libations of blood onto the snow before setting out, praying that Oral will allow them to return with game. Fishermen whisper prayers to her before venturing onto the ice, begging her not to let them fall through into the killing waters below. The regged tribes, in particular, have woven Oral into the fabric of their spiritual lives. Their shamans commune with her, or with the lesser spirits that serve her, seeking visions and guidance. They perform rituals in her honor during the darkest nights of winter, dancing around fires that seem pitifully small against the vast darkness, their voices rising in chants that have been passed down for countless generations. Some tribes have even adopted Oral as their primary deity, seeing in her ruthless nature a reflection of the harsh world that has shaped them. But Oral's worship takes on darker forms as well. There are cultists who serve her with fanatical devotion, who see in her cruelty not something to be appeased, but something to be embraced and emulated. These cultists seek to bring about eternal winter, to cover the world in ice and snow, until nothing remains but the cold and those strong enough to endure it. They perform sacrifices in her name, offering warmth and life to the goddess of cold and death. They work to undermine the settlements and the people, seeing civilization itself as an affront to Oral's dominion. Her priests and priestesses are rare, but unmistakable when you encounter them. They dress in whites and pale blues, their robes often decorated with snowflake patterns or frost-like designs. They carry staffs topped with ice crystals that never melt, symbols of their goddess's eternal grip. Some bear scars from frostbite, marks of devotion earned through exposure to deadly cold that they somehow survived. They speak in voices as cold as winter wind, promising doom to those who defy their goddess, and offering conditional mercy to those who show proper respect. The Frostmaiden herself is said to appear sometimes to those who dare venture into the deepest wilderness. Descriptions of her vary, but most agree on certain details. She is beautiful in the way that a snowflake is beautiful, perfect, and crystalline, and utterly inhuman. Some say she rides across the night sky on a white rock, weaving storms in her wake. Others claim she walks the tundra in the form of a woman made of living ice, her footsteps leaving flowers of frost that never fade. She is accompanied by frost druids and winter wolves, by yeti that serve as her enforcers, by ice mephits, and other creatures of elemental cold. Where she passes, warmth dies, and those who look upon her directly often find their hearts literally frozen in their chests. But Auril is not the only divine power worshipped in Icewind Dale, though she is certainly the most prominent. The people of 10 towns, many of whom came from southern lands where other gods held sway, maintain their own religious practices. Temples and shrines to various deities can be found scattered throughout the settlements, though none are as grand as the churches you might find in Waterdeep or Baldur's Gate. Tempest, the god of battle and war, has many followers among the people of the Dale. Both the settlers and the regged tribes respect strength and the ability to fight, and Tempest embodies these virtues. Warriors pray to him before battle, asking for strength and courage. Some barbarians believe that Kelvin's cairn itself was raised by Tempest after he slew a frost giant hero named Kelvin, piling stones over the giant's body as a warning. Whether this legend has any truth to it, the mountain stands as a monument to the importance of strength in this unforgiving land. Tyr, the god of justice, is worshipped by those in 10 towns who seek to maintain law and order in a place where civilization is always one disaster away from collapse. His priests serve as judges and mediators, helping to resolve disputes before they escalate into violence. In a land where cooperation is essential for survival, Tyr's emphasis on fairness and justice provides a framework for people from diverse backgrounds to coexist. The dwarves of Clan Battlehammer maintain their own religious traditions, primarily worshipping Moradin, the All-Father of the Dwarven Pantheon. Deep within Kelvin's cairn, they have carved a sacred grotto where natural shafts of light illuminate their prayers. Here they perform their most sacred rituals, forging holy weapons and armor, consecrating new members of the clan, honoring their ancestors. The grotto is also the site where the legendary warhammer Aegisfang was forged, a weapon that would become central to the Dale's greatest legends. Other gods find worship here as well. Helm, the god of guardians and watchers, is honored by those who stand watch on the town walls. Ilmater, the god of endurance and suffering, attracts those who have known great hardship. Selûne, goddess of the moon, is particularly revered during the long winter nights, when her light reflecting off snow and ice provides crucial illumination. Even Joaquin, goddess of trade, has her followers among the merchants of Bryn Shander, who understand that commerce is what keeps the Dale connected to the wider world. The regged tribes, beyond their worship of Oral, maintain older spiritual traditions. They revere the totemic spirits of the animals. Their tribes are named for bear, elk, tiger, and wolf. These are not gods in the traditional sense, but primal forces, embodiments of the qualities that allow survival in the frozen north. The bear represents strength and ferocity, the elk endurance and grace, the tiger stealth and precision, the wolf loyalty and pack mentality. Shamans commune with these spirits through vision quests and ritual, seeking guidance and power. But divine power is not the only magic that saturates Icewind Dale. Arcane magic, the magic of wizards and sorcerers, also flows through this land, though it is often twisted by the extreme conditions into forms both wondrous and terrible. The cold itself seems to amplify certain types of magic while suppressing others. Spells of ice and cold gain power here, while fire magic often proves less reliable than it should be, as if the very air resists warmth and flame. The greatest and most terrible example of arcane magic's corruption in Icewind Dale is Crenshinibin, the crystal shard. This artifact is a sentient item of immense power, a relic from an age when magic was wielded with terrible ambition and little restraint. The shard appears as a triangular crystal, roughly the size of a human heart, that pulses with inner light. But its beauty is deceptive, for Crenshinibin is fundamentally evil, driven by an insatiable hunger for power and dominion. The artifact possesses the ability to dominate minds, to bend the will of those who possess it, until they become nothing more than extensions of its desires. It can create towering structures of crystalline magic, fortresses that rise from nothing in mere hours. It grants its wielder tremendous magical power, the ability to command armies and reshape reality itself. But all of this comes at a terrible price. Crenshinibin corrupts everything it touches, turning allies into slaves, transforming noble intentions into tyrannical ambitions. The crystal shard has appeared in Icewind Dale multiple times throughout history, each time bringing catastrophe. It has been wielded by those who thought they could control it, only to discover too late that they had become its puppet. It has been buried, destroyed, hidden away in the deepest vaults. Yet it always finds a way to return, drawn by the presence of those with ambition and the magical sensitivity to hear its whispered promises of power. There is another corrupting force that has plagued Icewind Dale in more recent times: Chardalin, sometimes called black ice. This substance appears to be ordinary ice, dark and smoky in appearance, but it is actually something far more sinister. Chardalin is ice that has been infused with magical corruption, often from the Nine Hells or other sources of infernal power. It looks like clouded glass or dark crystal, beautiful in its own way, but touching it or working with it exposes you to its malevolent influence. Those who handle Chardalin extensively begin to change. They become paranoid, aggressive, quick to anger, and slow to forgive. They experience vivid nightmares and waking visions of violence and cruelty. Eventually, if the exposure continues, they lose themselves entirely, becoming vessels for the malice that permeates the substance. Entire communities have been torn apart by Chardelin corruption, neighbors turning on each other, friends becoming enemies, all because someone discovered a vein of the cursed ice and began mining it without understanding what they had found. Yet, despite its dangers, Chardelin has practical uses that make it tempting to those desperate enough or foolish enough to work with it. It can be forged and shaped like metal, creating weapons and armor of exceptional strength. It can power magical devices and constructs, providing energy that rivals or exceeds traditional sources. These properties have led some to deliberately seek out Chardelin, believing they can control its corrupting influence, or that the benefits outweigh the risks. They are almost always wrong. The spiritual landscape of Icewind Dale is further complicated by the presence of ancient magics that predate any current civilization. Buried beneath the ice and snow are remnants of Astoria, the empire of giants that ruled here in ages past. Some of these ruins still pulse with the magic that once powered them, wards and enchantments that have endured for millennia. There are standing stones scattered across the tundra, circles like the 20 stones of Thrune or the summer circle in the Farwood, that mark places where the barrier between the material world and other realms grows thin. Most terrible of all is Ithrin, the lost Netherese enclave that fell from the sky thousands of years ago and now lies entombed within the Regged Glacier. Netheril was an empire of wizards who wielded magic with a power and scope that has never been equaled since. They raised entire cities into the sky, turned deserts into gardens, experimented with forces that should never have been touched. Their hubris led to their destruction, but their magic survived, locked away in the frozen ruins of Ithrin. The city is a treasure trove of arcane knowledge, containing spells and magical items that would make their discoverer one of the most powerful beings in the world. It also contains horrors beyond imagining, experiments that went wrong, magical traps that remain active after all these centuries, and entities that were never meant to exist in the mortal world. Those who seek Ithrin do so at tremendous risk, but the potential rewards are so great that the desperate and the ambitious continue to search for it, despite the warnings of those who know better. Magic in Icewind Dale operates under certain constraints that you would not find in warmer climates. The extreme cold affects magical items, sometimes causing them to malfunction or fail entirely. Potions can freeze solid, becoming useless until thawed. Spell components become brittle. Even the magic itself seems to flow differently here, as if the natural laws that govern reality have been altered by the eternal winter. Divine magic, magic granted by the gods to their faithful, requires worship and devotion in Icewind Dale as it does throughout the Forgotten Realms. A cleric or paladin draws power from their deity, channeling divine will into healing, protection, or smiting their enemies. But here in the Dale, where survival often depends on practical concerns rather than spiritual devotion, maintaining that connection to the divine can be challenging. Some priests find their faith wavering during the darkest winter nights, when their prayers seem to go unheard and their deity feels impossibly distant. Druids, who draw their power from nature itself, face a different challenge. The nature they commune with in Icewind Dale is harsh and unforgiving, offering little of the gentle growth and renewal that druids in temperate lands experience. Druids here must embrace the cycle of winter and death as much as spring and rebirth, understanding that the cold serves a purpose in the greater scheme of things. Some become followers of Oral themselves, seeing in her the ultimate expression of nature's power. Others maintain independence, serving the land itself rather than any particular deity. Wizards and sorcerers, who rely on arcane magic rather than divine power, often find Icewind Dale both challenging and rewarding. The scarcity of magical resources, the difficulty of maintaining a proper library or laboratory in such harsh conditions, the constant threat of raiders or monsters interrupting their studies, all combine to make practicing arcane magic here extraordinarily difficult. Yet those who persevere often develop unique insights, learning to weave magic in ways that adapt to the extreme environment. They discover spells that function more efficiently in the cold, techniques for preserving magical energy, methods of combining natural phenomena with arcane formulas to achieve effects impossible elsewhere. As you stand in this frozen land, aware now of the divine and arcane forces that swirl around you, invisible but potent, you begin to understand that Icewind Dale exists at a nexus of power. The gods take an interest in this place, particularly Oral, whose dominion here is nearly absolute. Ancient magics sleep beneath the ice, waiting to be discovered or best left undisturbed. Artifacts of terrible power surface periodically, seeking those ambitious or foolish enough to wield them. And through it all, ordinary people struggle to survive, caught between forces they barely understand, praying to gods who may or may not listen, facing threats both mundane and supernatural. The magic of Icewind Dale is not the gentle, scholarly magic of southern wizard towers or the comforting divine grace of great temples. It is raw and dangerous, as likely to destroy the unwary as to aid them. It reflects the land itself, beautiful and terrible in equal measure, promising power to those brave enough to seek it, while threatening destruction to those who lack the wisdom to wield it properly. This is a place where the boundaries between the mortal and the divine, between the natural and the supernatural, grow thin as the ice that covers the lakes. And those boundaries are always ready to crack, plunging the unwary into depths from which there may be no return. Section 4. Ancient Foundations, Origins, and Early History. To truly understand Icewind Dale, you must look backward through the centuries, peeling away layers of history like ice, revealing ancient stone beneath. The story of this frozen land did not begin with the founding of 10 towns 400 years ago, nor even with the arrival of the Regged tribes, who claim to have roamed these lands since time immemorial. The roots of Icewind Dale stretch far deeper, into ages when the world was young, and very different beings walked beneath these same cold stars. Long before humans ever ventured this far north, before dwarves carved their halls into Kelvin's cairn, before even the elves walked the forests of Faerun, giants ruled the world. Their empire was called Astoria, and it was vast beyond imagining, stretching across the northern reaches of the continent when the land was warmer and more hospitable than it is today. The giants of Astoria were not the scattered, brutish creatures you might encounter on the tundra today. They were organized, civilized after their fashion, building great cities and monuments that stood as testaments to their power and longevity. In the lands that would become Icewind Dale, the giants raised fortresses and halls appropriate to their immense scale. They carved roads through the mountains, erected standing stones to mark sacred sites and boundaries, built keeps that towered hundreds of feet into the air. The giants worshipped their own gods, practiced their own magic, and viewed the smaller races as little more than interesting curiosities when they noticed them at all. This was their world, and they were its undisputed masters. But empires, no matter how mighty, do not last forever. The giants fell to infighting, their unity shattered by conflicts between different giant clans and types. Frost giants battled storm giants, fire giants warred with cloud giants, and in their conflicts, they tore their own empire apart from within. The changing climate also worked against them as the north grew colder, as the ice sheets advanced, and the lands they had ruled became increasingly inhospitable even to creatures as hardy as giants. And perhaps most devastating of all, the smaller races began to rise, to organize themselves, to discover that though individually weak, collectively they could challenge even the mighty giants. The fall of Astoria did not happen in a single catastrophic event, but rather through a slow decline spanning millennia. The great giant cities were abandoned one by one as their populations dwindled or moved south to warmer lands. The roads crumbled, the monuments weathered, the halls fell silent. Snow and ice buried what remained, preserving it in frozen stasis, but rendering it invisible to those who came after. By the time humans first explored Icewind Dale, the giant empire was little more than legend, and even the legends were fragmentary and confused, passed down through so many generations that truth and myth had become hopelessly intertwined. Yet the ruins remain, hidden beneath the ice and snow, waiting to be discovered by those brave or foolish enough to seek them. In the spine of the world, there are valleys where massive stone structures still stand, their architecture clearly designed for beings 3 or 4 times the height of a human. Carved pillars rise from the tundra in seemingly random locations, marking sites whose original purpose has been lost to time. Deep caves contain giant-sized furniture and tools, abandoned so long ago that they have become part of the stone itself, and in the most remote locations, protected by magical wards that still function after uncounted centuries. There are treasuries and armories where the giants stored their most precious possessions. These ruins are dangerous for many reasons. Some are structurally unsound, their stone weakened by millennia of freeze-thaw cycles. Others are inhabited by creatures that have made the abandoned giant halls their lairs. From frost giants, who view the ruins as their ancestral heritage, to more alien beings that have no connection to the original builders. And some ruins are protected by ancient magic, traps, and guardians that activate when intruders enter, as deadly now as the day they were first set in place. After the fall of the giants, Icewind Dale stood empty for long ages. The climate continued to deteriorate, the glaciers advanced, and the land became increasingly inhospitable. It was during this period that the Regged tribes likely first arrived, though the exact timeline of their coming is unclear, lost in the oral traditions that the tribes maintain. Different stories give different accounts, some claiming the Regged have always been here, born from the ice itself. Others speak of a great migration from lands to the south or across the sea, of ancestors fleeing some catastrophe or seeking new hunting grounds, based on what fragments of their history can be pieced together. We can reasonably infer that they have inhabited these lands for many centuries at minimum, perhaps even 1,000 years or more, long enough that their origins have faded into legend, even among their own people. What is certain is that by the time written history begins to mention Icewind Dale, the Regged were already well established. Their 4 tribes ranging across territories, they considered their ancestral lands. They knew the location of many of the giant ruins and had their own legends about the previous inhabitants. Some tribes claimed descent from giants, saying that their ancestors had taken giant mates, and that their size and strength came from this mixed heritage. Others spoke of great battles between their forebears and the last giants, epic conflicts that ended with the giants driven away or slain. The dwarves arrived later, drawn by rumors of mineral wealth in the mountains. Clan Battlehammer was not the first dwarven expedition to explore Kelvin's cairn, but they were the first to establish a permanent settlement. The mountain's geothermal warmth made it ideal for dwarven habitation, and the veins of mithril and other precious metals they discovered deep within its stone made the hardships of living so far north worthwhile. The dwarves carved their halls with the skill and patience their race is renowned for, creating a subterranean city that could support hundreds of their kind in comfort, despite the frozen wasteland mere feet of stone away. The establishment of the dwarven stronghold marked a turning point in the history of Icewind Dale. For the first time, there was a permanent, fortified settlement in the region, a place where travelers could seek shelter and trade. The dwarves brought with them knowledge of mining and smithing, agricultural techniques adapted for the harsh climate, and most importantly, connections to the wider world through dwarven trade networks. News of Icewind Dale began to spread to the kingdoms of the south. It was this spreading knowledge that eventually led to the founding of 10 towns. The first explorers who ventured into Icewind Dale did so for various reasons. Some were seeking wealth, having heard tales of untapped mineral deposits and rare resources. Others were fleeing persecution or justice in southern lands, viewing the frozen north as a place where they could disappear and start anew. Some came simply out of curiosity or a desire for adventure, to see lands few others had laid eyes upon. The discovery that changed everything was the knucklehead trout. These peculiar fish, found nowhere else in all of Faerun, possessed heads with a bony protrusion that could be carved and polished into a substance resembling ivory. Early explorers who caught these fish and brought samples south found ready markets for the scrimshaw, as it could be worked into beautiful carvings, jewelry, and decorative items. The demand was sufficient to make fishing in the frozen lakes of Icewind Dale a potentially profitable enterprise, despite all the hardships involved. The Dynev family from Cormer was among the earliest to recognize this opportunity. Nobles in search of new ventures, they organized an expedition north around the year 1026 Dale reckoning, over 460 years before the present day. Their journey through the spine of the world was arduous, taking months and costing lives to weather and attacks from hostile creatures. But they persevered, and when they emerged onto the tundra and saw the 3 great lakes spread before them, they knew they had found something valuable. The Dynevs established their settlement on the shores of Lac Dinnesher, the eastern lake that bore the harshest winds, but also, they discovered, held abundant populations of knucklehead trout. They built a castle for defense and began constructing the infrastructure needed for a fishing operation. Docks, boats, nets, and housing for the workers they brought with them or hired from among the adventurers and fortune seekers who followed in their wake. This settlement would eventually become Caerdineville, named for the family that founded it. Word of the Dynev success spread south, carried by merchants who bought scrimshaw and sold supplies. Other expeditions soon followed, each seeking to claim their own piece of the lakes and the wealth they promised. Bryn Shander emerged as a simple trading post on a hill roughly equidistant from the 3 lakes, a place where the scattered fishing camps could meet to trade goods without giving any single camp an advantage. As more camps established themselves and grew into villages, Bryn Shander's position made it the natural hub, and it gradually evolved from trading post to town to the largest settlement in the region. The other towns developed over the following decades and centuries, each finding its own path to survival. Targos, positioned where the main overland route from Luskan reached the lakes, grew wealthy on trade and fishing. Bremen attracted those who wanted to supplement fishing with prospecting along the Shingarn River. Lonely Wood emerged in the northern forest, drawing those who valued independence above safety. The settlements around the three lakes multiplied, driven by the promise of knucklehead trout scrimshaw and the desperate hope that wealth could be wrung from this frozen land, despite all its efforts to kill those who dared try. The growth of 10 towns was not smooth or peaceful. Orc and goblin tribes from the mountains raided constantly, viewing the settlements as sources of plunder. Barbarian tribes, resentful of these newcomers claiming the best fishing grounds and hunting territories, conducted their own raids. Competition between the towns themselves sometimes erupted into violence, with fishing fleets from rival settlements clashing over territory or merchants being ambushed on the trails between towns. In the early years, it was not uncommon for entire settlements to be wiped out, only to be resettled months or years later by new waves of hopeful colonists. The hostile creatures and harsh environment necessitated fortifications. Most towns built walls, watchtowers, and maintained militias that could respond to attacks. The exception was Lonely Wood, which never built walls, but survived through the strength of its community and the forest's natural defensive advantages. Bryn Shander, as the largest settlement and most likely target for major attacks, built the strongest fortifications, walls that could shelter refugees from all the other towns if a catastrophic threat emerged. Over time, the settlements developed a system of cooperation out of necessity. The Council of Speakers emerged as a forum where representatives from each town could meet to discuss shared concerns, resolve disputes without violence, and coordinate responses to major threats. While the council had no enforcement power and its decisions were not binding, it provided a structure for dialogue that helped prevent the towns from destroying each other through constant conflict. On the eastern shore of Lac Dineshire, Caerdineville faced challenges almost from its founding. Orc tribes from the mountains viewed the new settlement as an intrusion on their raiding grounds and laid siege to it repeatedly. In one catastrophic attack, the original population was wiped out entirely. The castle breached and its inhabitants slaughtered, but the value of the location was too great to abandon, and new settlers eventually reclaimed the site, rebuilding the fortifications and resettling the town under its original name, perhaps out of respect for those who had died there, or perhaps simply because the name was already known to merchants and traders. Caerconnig, despite its name suggesting royalty, developed as a smaller settlement that shared fishing waters with Caerdineville. The town's name comes from a period when it was ruled by a king from one of the barbarian tribes, though this could suggest that the arrangement was either remarkably successful or remarkably brief. Given that such cross-cultural governance was unusual in the Dale's history, no actual castle was ever completed before orc raids destroyed the partially built fortification. The town that grew up on the site maintained the grand name Even though it remained one of the smaller and poorer settlements, Easthaven began as a shanty town, a collection of temporary structures put up by fishermen who worked the eastern waters of Lac Dineshire during the season and abandoned them when winter made fishing impossible. Gradually, some residents began staying year-round, and when the Eastway Road was constructed connecting Easthaven to Bryn Shander, the settlement grew into one of the larger towns, benefiting from its position as both a fishing village and a trade route waypoint. The three towns on Redwaters, the northern lake, developed later and grew more slowly due to the lake's distance from the main trade routes. Dugan's Hole was little more than a handful of houses, even at its peak, notable mainly for its proximity to the mysterious 20 Stones of Throon. Tourmaline attracted settlers who discovered gem deposits in the surrounding hills and developed a mining operation to supplement the fishing income. And Good Mead carved out a unique niche by focusing on producing honey wine, its mead becoming famous enough to be sought after throughout the north. The discovery of ancient ruins, particularly giant ruins, added another dimension to life in 10 towns. Treasure seekers ventured into the mountains and across the tundra, searching for giant hoards and magical artifacts. Some returned wealthy beyond their dreams. Others never returned at all, their fates unknown but easily imagined. The ruins became sources of both opportunity and danger, places where fortunes could be made, but lives were often lost. As decades turned to centuries, patterns emerged in the life of 10 towns. Good years brought prosperity, with abundant fish harvests and successful trading seasons. Bad years brought famine, increased raids, and desperate struggles for survival. The population fluctuated wildly, swelling when southern merchants brought tales of riches to be made, then plummeting when harsh winters or devastating attacks reminded everyone why most sensible people avoided the frozen north entirely. The relationship between 10 towns and the Regged tribes evolved slowly from pure hostility towards something more complex. There were still raids, still conflicts over territory and resources, but there were also moments of cooperation, times when mutual threats forced old enemies to work together. Individual barbarians sometimes settled in the towns, bringing their skills as hunters and warriors. Occasionally, a barbarian would even rise to leadership in a settlement, as happened in Bremen and Caerconnig, creating bridges between the two cultures, even as tensions remained. The dwarves of Kelvin's Cairn maintained their independence throughout this period, emerging to trade, but always returning to their mountain halls. Their relationship with both the human settlers and the Regged tribes was primarily economic, based on the exchange of dwarven crafts and metalwork for food and other necessities. But there were also deeper connections forming, friendships between individual dwarves and humans, marriages between the races, alliances that would prove crucial when the Dale faced its greatest threats. As you stand here, looking back across 4 centuries of human habitation in Icewind Dale, you can see how this land has shaped its people and been shaped by them in turn. The settlements that survived were those whose people learned to adapt, to cooperate when necessary, to defend themselves effectively, and to exploit every resource the harsh environment provided. Those that failed, that gave in to despair or internal conflict or simple misfortune, left only names and ruins to mark where they once stood. The 10 towns you see today are the survivors, tempered by centuries of hardship into something resilient and enduring, a testament to the stubborn determination of those who refuse to let this frozen land defeat them. Section 5. The Age of Legends, Heroes, Villains, and Epic Conflicts. Now you must turn your attention to a period that transformed Icewind Dale from a remote frontier into a place spoken of in taverns across Faerun. A time when heroes walked the frozen tundra and villains sought to claim dominion over the Dale. The events that unfolded in the middle years of the 14th century Dale reckoning would become legend. Tales told and retold until they took on the weight of myth. Yet these were real events, witnessed by real people, and their consequences shaped Icewind Dale for generations to come. The story truly begins in the year 1347 Dale Reckoning, when a dark elf emerged from the Underdark and made his way north to Icewind Dale, seeking refuge from his own people and from the darkness that had defined his entire existence up to that point. His name was Drizzt Do'Urden, and he was something that should not exist. A drow with a conscience, a dark elf who rejected the cruelty and evil that his race embraced, who sought instead to live by principles of honor and compassion that were utterly foreign to the society he had fled. You must understand what it meant for a drow to appear in Icewind Dale. The dark elves were known throughout Faerun as creatures of pure malevolence, raiders and slavers who emerged from their subterranean cities to spread terror and death. They worshipped Lolt, the demon queen of spiders, and their society was built on betrayal, cruelty, and the pursuit of power through any means necessary. A drow walking openly in the surface world would be attacked on sight by anyone who recognized what he was. And rightly so, for drow did not come to the surface with peaceful intentions. But Drizzt was different. He had been born into House Do'Urden, a powerful, noble family in the drow city of Menzoberranzan. And from his earliest years, he had felt a wrongness in the culture around him. The casual cruelty, the constant scheming, the way his people delighted in causing suffering. All of it repulsed him even as he was trained to embrace it. He had tried to conform, tried to become what his family and his society demanded. But ultimately, he could not suppress the voice inside him that insisted there had to be a better way to live. His flight from the Underdark had been harrowing. A decade of wandering through lightless tunnels, surviving by his wits and his skill with the twin scimitars he carried. When he finally emerged onto the surface, he found a world that feared and hated him as much as the one he had left behind. Humans, elves, dwarves, all saw only his black skin and white hair, the unmistakable markers of Drow heritage, and assumed he was an enemy. He learned to travel at night, to avoid settlements, to live as an outcast in a world that had no place for him. Icewind Dale, in its isolation and harshness, offered him something he had found nowhere else: the possibility of being judged by his actions rather than his heritage. The people here were too busy surviving to maintain the prejudices that dominated softer lands. If you could pull your weight, if you proved yourself trustworthy, your past and your appearance mattered less than they would elsewhere. It was not acceptance, not at first, but it was a chance, and that was more than Drizzt had been offered anywhere else. He made his home in a cave on the northern slopes of Kelvin's Cairn, sharing the space with a great panther he had summoned from the astral plane, a magical companion named Genwivar. The panther was more than an animal, more even than a pet. She was a friend, perhaps the only true friend Drizzt had known in his entire life. Together, they hunted the tundra, Drizzt honing the combat skills that had been drilled into him during his training in Menzoberranzan, learning to adapt those techniques to the unique challenges of the frozen north. It was during one of these hunts that Drizzt encountered Brunner Battlehammer, the gruff dwarf who would become the first person to see past his dark elf heritage and recognize the character beneath. Brunner was out on the tundra leading a small expedition from his clan, and when he first saw Drizzt, his reaction was predictable. He attacked, assuming the drow was a threat that needed to be eliminated. But Drizzt did not kill the dwarves even when he could have, instead disarming them and retreating, trying to demonstrate that he meant no harm. That restraint saved his life and changed everything that followed. Brunner, curious about a drow who refused to fight when he had every advantage, sought Drizzt out again. They spoke, warily at first, each testing the other, trying to determine if trust was possible. Brunner was no fool, and he knew the reputation of the drow. But he was also a dwarf who valued actions over words, deeds over appearances. Over time, through shared dangers and proven loyalty, a friendship formed between them that would become legendary in its own right. Through Brunner, Drizzt was introduced to others who would become his companions. Brunner had an adopted human daughter named Catti, a girl he had taken in after her father died, defending the dwarf's caravan from an attack. Brunner raised her as his own, teaching her the values of clan and honor that defined dwarven culture, while also allowing her to develop in ways that would have been impossible in traditional human society. Catti grew into a fierce warrior and skilled archer, as comfortable on the frozen tundra as any regged barbarian, but also possessing a curiosity and compassion that set her apart. Catti was among the first to accept Drizzt without reservation. Where others saw a dark elf and all the evil that implied, she saw a person who had risked everything to live according to his principles. Her acceptance helped others in 10 towns begin to see Drizzt differently, to judge him by his actions rather than his race. It was a slow process, filled with setbacks and moments when old prejudices flared. But gradually Drizzt found himself becoming part of the community he had chosen. The other member of this growing circle of friends was Regis, a halfling who had fled to Icewind Dale from Calimport in the distant south. Regis was running from the thieves' guild he had betrayed, carrying with him a magical ruby pendant that could influence the minds of those who looked upon it. He was not a warrior like Drizzt or Catti-brie, not a craftsman like Bruenor. He was a survivor, clever and resourceful, able to talk his way out of troubles that others would have to fight through. He made his living carving scrimshaw from knucklehead trout heads, his skill with the knife producing pieces of art that commanded high prices in Bryn Shander's markets. Regis and Drizzt became unlikely friends. The halfling appreciated that the drow never judged him for his past or his sometimes questionable ethics, while Drizzt valued Regis's ability to see humor and joy even in the harsh conditions of the Dale. They spent many evenings in Regis's small home in Lonelywood, sharing meals and stories, finding in each other's company a respite from their troubled pasts. But this period of relative peace was not to last. The year 1351 Dale Reckoning brought significant changes. Bruenor decided it was time to take in a young barbarian from the Elk tribe, a boy named Wulfgar, who had been captured during a raid on the dwarven settlement. Rather than kill the boy or ransom him back to his tribe, Bruenor saw potential in him and decided to do something unprecedented. He would train the barbarian, teach him discipline and craftsmanship, try to channel his raw strength and anger into something more constructive. The training was harsh, lasting 5 years, during which Wulfgar labored in the dwarven forges, learning to work metal, to temper his emotions as Bruenor tempered steel. The young barbarian resented his captivity at first, viewing it as slavery. But gradually, he came to understand that Bruenor was offering him something his tribe could never provide: knowledge, discipline, and a sense of purpose beyond mere survival and raiding. The dwarf became a father figure to Wulfgar, as much as he was to Catti-brie, and the barbarian's respect and affection for Bruenor grew with each passing year. When Wulfgar's time of service was complete in 1356 Dale Reckoning, Bruenor forged for him a warhammer of surpassing quality. He worked mithril and diamond into the weapon, channeling all his skill and the blessings of Moradin himself into its creation. He called it Aegisfang, and it was a weapon worthy of legend. The hammer was perfectly balanced, light enough for Wulfgar to wield with devastating speed despite its massive size, yet heavy enough to shatter stone and bone with equal ease. Bruenor also imbued it with magic that would allow Wulfgar to throw the hammer and have it return to his hand, making him deadly at any range. With Aegisfang in hand and his training complete, Wulfgar was set free to return to his tribe. But the young barbarian had changed during his years with Bruenor. He had learned that there was more to strength than simply the ability to kill, more to honor than simply following the ways of one's ancestors without question. When he returned to the elk tribe, he brought with him new ideas, new perspectives, and a burning desire to unite the regged tribes and forge a better relationship with 10 towns. It was into this situation, with these people and their interwoven destinies, that the greatest threat Icewind Dale had yet faced emerged. His name was Akar Kessel, and he was, by any objective measure, a failure. He had trained as a wizard in the Hostor of the Arcane in Luskan, one of the most prestigious magical institutions in the north. But he had proven utterly incompetent. His teachers despaired of him, his fellow apprentices mocked him, and eventually he was expelled from the tower, cast out as unworthy of the art. Bitter and humiliated, Kessel traveled north with a merchant caravan, working as a menial laborer because he had no other options. During a blizzard in the spine of the world, he became separated from the caravan and stumbled into a cave seeking shelter. There, half frozen and delirious, he found something that would change everything. Krencheniben, the crystal shard, the artifact recognized in Kessel exactly what it needed. Someone weak-willed enough to dominate completely. Someone hungry enough for power that he would surrender himself entirely to achieve it. The shard bonded with Kessel, flooding his mind with magical knowledge and power that he could never have achieved on his own. Suddenly, this failed apprentice could cast spells that would challenge the greatest wizards of the age. He could create a tower of pure crystal, a structure called Crishal Tirith that rose from the tundra in a matter of hours. He could command and dominate creatures, bending them to his will through the shard's power. But the power was not truly his. Kessel had become little more than a puppet, animated by Krencheniben's will even as he believed he was the master. The shard wanted conquest, dominion, the subjugation of all thinking beings under its control, and it used Kessel to pursue these goals. The failed wizard gathered an army of goblins, orcs, ogres, and giants from the spine of the world. Creatures that normally would never cooperate, but found themselves unable to resist the shard's compulsion. He also gained the allegiance of Angelocastamazillion, the ancient white dragon known more commonly as Icing Death, who laired in the caves beneath the tundra and had long terrorized the region. In the year 1356 Dale Reckoning, 9 years after Drist first arrived in the Dale, Kessel declared his intention to conquer 10 towns. His army descended from the mountains, a force larger than anything the settlements had ever faced. Crishal Tirith rose on the tundra like a massive crystalline fist, visible for miles in every direction, a symbol of the power Kessel wielded. The wizards sent emissaries to the Council of Speakers, demanding their immediate surrender and promising destruction if they refused. The 10 towns were divided in how to respond. Some speakers argued for surrender, believing resistance was hopeless against such overwhelming force. Others wanted to fight, to defend their homes regardless of the odds. ancient rivalries between the towns made cooperation difficult, each settlement suspicious of the others, unwilling to commit their forces unless they were certain everyone else would do the same. It seemed entirely possible that the loose confederation that had held for centuries would shatter in the face of this threat, leaving each town to face Kessel's army alone and be destroyed piecemeal. It was Regis who provided the solution. Using his magical ruby pendant, he went from speaker to speaker, influencing their minds, helping them overcome their suspicions and focus on the common threat. His manipulation was well-intentioned, aimed at saving lives rather than pursuing personal gain. But it was manipulation nonetheless. Under his influence, the Council of Speakers agreed to unite their forces and make a stand. But even united, 10 towns could not hope to defeat Kessel's army in open battle. They needed something more, some advantage that could offset the wizards' overwhelming numerical superiority. That advantage came from an unexpected source: the Regged tribes, Wulfgar, having recently returned to his people with new ideas about cooperation with the settled folk, saw in Kessel's invasion a threat to everyone in Icewind Dale. He convinced the chieftains of the 4 tribes to set aside their grievances with 10 towns and fight alongside them against the common enemy. The alliance was fragile and temporary, forged in desperation, and held together more by shared fear than mutual trust. But it gave the defenders a chance. With the barbarian warriors bolstering their numbers and providing fierce fighters who could match the orcs and ogres in combat, 10 towns had an army that could at least make Kessel's victory costly. The battle that followed has been recounted in countless tellings, each version slightly different, but all agreeing on the essential facts. Kessel's army struck at multiple towns simultaneously, seeking to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. The fighting was brutal, desperate, with the defenders knowing that defeat meant not just death, but the enslavement of any survivors. Bryn Shander's walls were breached, and it seemed the largest settlement would fall, taking with it any hope of victory. But Drist and Wulfgar, working together, had conceived a daring plan. While the main army was engaged, they would infiltrate Krisheltirith and strike at Kessel directly. If they could kill the wizard or destroy the tower, the army he commanded might break apart without his will to hold it together. It was a desperate gamble, but desperation was all they had. Their journey to the tower was fraught with danger, fighting through ranks of goblins and avoiding the attention of Icewind Dale, who patrolled the skies above. Inside Krisheltirith, they found a structure of impossible beauty and terrible purpose, its walls reflecting and refracting light in ways that could drive viewers mad, its passages shifting and changing as if the tower itself were alive. They confronted Kessel in his throne room, and their Drist realized the truth. The wizard was not the true threat. Crenshinibin was. The final confrontation came not through direct combat with Kessel, but through an attack on the tower itself. Brunner leading a desperate charge, brought dwarven engineering knowledge to bear, identifying the tower's structural weaknesses. Wulfgar, hurling Aegisfang with all his considerable strength, struck the critical point, and Crishel Tirith began to collapse. Kessel, his connection to the tower severed, his power suddenly gone, fled in terror. The dragon Icing Death, freed from the shard's domination, turned on his former master. In the chaos, Crenshinibin itself was buried beneath tons of crystalline debris. With the tower's collapse, Kessel's army broke. The orcs and goblins, no longer held together by the shard's will, turned on each other or fled back to the mountains. The white dragon disappeared into the depths of the earth, and though Icing Death would be encountered again, the threat it posed at that moment was ended. 10 towns and the regged tribes had won, though the cost in lives was staggering. The victory transformed Icewind Dale. The cooperation between the settled folk and the barbarian tribes, forged in battle, led to a period of relative peace and increased trade. Wulfgar became a hero to both his people and the people of 10 towns, a bridge between two cultures that had been enemies for generations. Brunner, Drist, Catti-brie, Regis, and Wulfgar became known as the companions of the Hall legendary heroes, whose names would be spoken with reverence throughout the North. But the story did not end there. Crenshinibin was not destroyed, merely buried, and its malevolent intelligence was already seeking a way to return. The Balor demon Uratu, who had been bound to the shard in ages past, was freed by its burial and immediately began plotting to reclaim it, and the companions themselves would face many more trials, journeys that would take them far from Icewind Dale, but always bring them back to the frozen land where their fellowship was forged. The age of legends had begun, and Icewind Dale would never be quite the same. The people here had learned that they were capable of greatness when they worked together, that the barriers between cultures and peoples could be overcome in the face of existential threats. They had also learned that power, even when wielded with good intentions, came with terrible costs, and that some forces were too dangerous to be controlled by mortal hands. These lessons would echo through the generations to come, shaping the Dale's future in ways both inspiring and cautionary. Section 6. Enduring Darkness, Later Threats, and the Everlasting Rime. The defeat of Akar Kessel and the burial of Crenshinibin marked the beginning of a golden age for Icewind Dale. But you must understand that in this frozen land, even golden ages are tarnished by hardship and shadowed by approaching threats. The victory over the Crystal Shard proved that the peoples of the Dale could unite against existential dangers. But it also revealed something more troubling: that Icewind Dale attracted darkness, the way a flame attracts moths. That power and ambition would always find their way to this remote corner of the world, drawn by the very isolation that made it a refuge for those seeking to escape their pasts. The years following the Battle of Crishel Tirith saw 10 towns and the regged tribes working together with unprecedented cooperation. Trade flourished, walls were rebuilt stronger than before, and a sense of hope permeated the settlements that had been absent for generations. Wulfgar became a bridge between the barbarian tribes and the settled folk. His presence, a constant reminder that understanding between cultures was possible. Brunner continued his work in the forges beneath Kelvin's cairn, crafting weapons and armor that helped defend the Dale. Drizzt patrolled the tundra, his skills keeping the worst predators at bay. Catti-brie grew into a formidable warrior in her own right, her archery skills becoming legendary, and Regis carved his scrimshaw and enjoyed the peace, always aware that it could not last, but determined to savor it while it did. But peace in Icewind Dale is always temporary, always threatened by forces that care nothing for the fragile arrangements mortals make among themselves. Uratu, the Ballard demon who had been bound to Crenshinibin in ages past, was freed when the crystal shard was buried. The demon had served the artifact for centuries, chafing under its domination, and his release should have been cause for celebration. But Uratu was a creature of the abyss, a being of pure malevolence and chaos, and his freedom only meant that he could now pursue his own terrible agenda without restraint. The demon's hatred focused on Drizzt Do'Urden during their brief encounters during the battle with Kessel. Uratu had been humiliated, driven back by a mere mortal wielding skills and courage that should not have been sufficient to challenge an abyssal lord. This humiliation festered in the demon's mind, growing into an obsession. Uratu plotted his revenge, gathering his strength, summoning lesser demons to serve him, preparing for the moment when he could strike at the Drow Ranger and inflict suffering beyond imagining. The demon also sought to reclaim Crenshinibin. Though buried, the crystal shard was not destroyed, and its power called to those sensitive enough to hear it. Uratu believed that if he could recover the artifact and bind it to his will, he would become unstoppable, a force that could challenge even the lords of the abyss themselves. His quest for the shard and his desire for vengeance against Drizzt became intertwined, twin obsessions that drove him to acts of increasing desperation and cruelty. The conflict between Uratu and the companions of the Hall would span years, taking them far from Icewind Dale on journeys across Faerun. But always they returned to the frozen north, drawn back by bonds of friendship and the knowledge that this harsh land had made them who they were. The battles they fought, the losses they endured, the victories they achieved, all became part of the growing legend that surrounded them. But you must understand that legends, while inspiring, are built on real suffering, real sacrifice, real people making impossible choices in situations where there are no good options. Time passed, as it always does, and the heroes of one generation became the elders of the next. Brunner reclaimed Mithril Hall, the ancient dwarven kingdom that had been his birthright, and ruled there as king. Wulfgar faced trials that nearly broke him, descending into darkness before finding redemption. Drizzt continued his eternal struggle to prove that his actions defined him rather than his heritage. Catti-brie and Regis grew older, their bodies bearing the scars of countless battles, their spirits tempered by experience into something harder and wiser than the young people who had first faced Kessel's army, and in their absence, Icewind Dale endured. New heroes arose to face new threats. The settlements grew and occasionally shrank as fortune favored or punished them. The regged tribes continued their ancient ways, adapting slowly to the changing world around them while maintaining the core traditions that defined them. The dwarves of Kelvin's cairn worked their forges and their mines, creating works of beauty and function that found their way into collections across Faerun. Life in the Dale continued its cycles of hardship and brief respite, of cooperation and conflict, of survival snatched from the jaws of seemingly certain doom. But as the centuries turned and the calendar advanced into the 15th century Dale reckoning, new threats began to manifest. The world was changing in ways both subtle and profound. The spell plague had torn reality itself, rewriting the rules of magic and geography. Gods had died and been reborn, their portfolios shifting, their relationships with mortals fundamentally altered. And in the far north, in isolated Icewind Dale, these changes manifested in ways that were uniquely terrible. Chardalyn, that corrupted substance you learned about earlier, began appearing in greater quantities. Prospectors discovered veins of the dark ice in locations where it had never been found before. And the temptation to mine and work, it proved too strong for many to resist. The corruption spread slowly at first, affecting individuals, then families, then entire communities. People who had lived peacefully for decades suddenly turned on their neighbors. Friends became enemies over imagined slights. Paranoia and violence infected the settlements like a plague. And those who recognized what was happening often found themselves powerless to stop it. The source of the Chardalyn proliferation was eventually traced to ancient magical workings, to experiments conducted in ages past that had gone catastrophically wrong and left their poisonous legacy buried beneath the ice. Some whispered that it was connected to Ithrin, that lost Netherese city entombed within the regged glacier, that the hubris of those ancient wizards was still claiming victims millennia after their civilization had fallen. Others blamed more recent events, suggesting that the spell plague had awakened or created the corruption. The truth, as is often the case, was likely more complex than any single explanation could encompass. In the year 1489 Dale reckoning, a new catastrophe descended upon Icewind Dale. Auril, the Frostmaiden, who had always held sway over the Dale, but had generally been content with her traditional worship and offerings, decided that the time had come to assert her dominion more completely. Perhaps she was angered by some perceived slight. Or perhaps she simply grew tired of sharing her domain with mortals who dared to defy her with their fires and their stubborn insistence on survival. Whatever her reasons, she cast a terrible spell that would be remembered as the everlasting Rime. The sun stopped rising. Day after day, week after week, month after month, the sky remained dark, or at best dimly twilit. The brief summers that had provided respite from the endless winter vanished entirely. Temperatures plummeted to depths that had not been seen in living memory. The plants that had clung to life on the tundra died. The reindeer herds, unable to find food, either migrated away or perished. The fish in the lakes, stressed by the changing conditions, became increasingly scarce. And the people of 10 towns found themselves facing a crisis that threatened not just their prosperity, but their very existence. The first winter of the everlasting Rime was terrible. The second was worse. By the time 2 full years had passed in near constant darkness, with temperatures so low that frostbite could strike in seconds, and snow fell almost continuously, the settlements were on the verge of collapse. Food stores ran dangerously low. Fuel for fires became scarce as the nearest forests were stripped bare. People began to freeze to death in their own homes, unable to keep fires burning hot enough to sustain life. Madness afflicted those who spent too long in the oppressive darkness, their minds breaking under the strain of endless night. In their desperation, the people of 10 towns began making darker offerings to Auril, hoping to appease her and convince her to lift the Rime. It started with sacrifices of food and valuables, goods they could ill afford to part with but were willing to give up if it meant the sun would return. When these offerings produced no results, some communities began offering more valuable sacrifices, prized possessions, magical items, even the lives of animals. And eventually, in the darkest moments of despair, some began to whisper about human sacrifice, about offering the Frostmaiden what she truly wanted: the warmth of living breath, the heat of spilled blood upon the snow. Not all communities descended to such depths. There were leaders who refused to compromise their principles, even in the face of extinction, who argued that becoming monsters to survive was no survival at all. But the pressure was immense, and the fear was overwhelming. And you cannot judge those who made terrible choices when you have not walked in their snow-filled boots, when you have not felt the gnawing hunger and the bone-deep cold that drove them to consider the unthinkable. It was during this period that adventurers from outside the Dale began arriving, drawn by rumors of the eternal night and the mysteries it concealed. Some came seeking glory, others profit, still others simply because they could not resist the challenge of solving a puzzle that had stumped everyone else. These outsiders brought fresh perspectives and skills that the beleaguered people of 10 towns desperately needed. They investigated the causes of the everlasting Rime, fought the creatures that grew more bold in the extended darkness, and eventually uncovered connections between Auril's curse, the Chardelin corruption, and the ancient secrets buried beneath the ice. The lost city of Ithrin became the focus of much attention during this time. This Netherese enclave, which had crashed into the glacier thousands of years ago, was discovered to hold both the key to understanding the everlasting Rime and potentially the power to end it. Expeditions into the glacier, braving the terrible cold and the ancient guardians that still protected the ruins brought back fragments of knowledge and artifacts of immense power, but they also unleashed new threats, awakening things that had slumbered peacefully in the ice for millennia and should have remained undisturbed. The resolution of the everlasting Rime crisis, when it finally came, involved sacrifice and heroism on a scale that rivaled the legendary deeds of the companions of the Hall. The exact details vary depending on who tells the story. And indeed, there may have been multiple groups working toward the same goal simultaneously, each contributing to the final solution in ways they never fully understood. What is certain is that Auril was confronted, her magic was challenged, and through a combination of courage, cleverness, and more than a little luck, the eternal night was broken. The sun rose again over Icewind Dale, and though it was still the feeble northern sun that barely cleared the horizon, even at its height, to the people who had spent 2 years in darkness, it seemed as bright as the noonday sun over distant Calamshire. The temperatures remained cold because this was still the frozen north, but they were survivable cold rather than lethal cold. The plants began to grow again, tentatively at first, but with increasing vigor. The animals returned, and the people of 10 towns began the slow process of rebuilding, of healing from the trauma of those dark years, of learning to trust in the future again. But the everlasting Rime left scars that would take generations to heal. Entire families had been wiped out. Communities that had existed for centuries were abandoned, their populations either dead or scattered. The relationships between the settlements, strained by competition for increasingly scarce resources, required careful mending, and the knowledge of what some had been willing to do, the depths to which desperation had driven them, could not be erased, no matter how much they might wish to forget. As you stand here now, contemplating the history of Icewind Dale, from its ancient foundations through its age of legends, to the more recent horrors of the everlasting Rime, you begin to understand the pattern that defines this place. Danger comes to Icewind Dale in cycles, each threat seemingly more terrible than the last, each crisis pushing the people closer to the breaking point. Yet, somehow they endure. Somehow they find within themselves the strength to face each new catastrophe, to survive when survival seems impossible, to rebuild when everything has been destroyed. This is not a land for the weak or the timid. It has never been, and it never will be. The cold will kill you if you let it. The creatures that roam the tundra will devour you if you drop your guard. The ancient magics buried beneath the ice will corrupt you if you seek them unwisely, and the gods themselves, particularly Auril in her terrible majesty, will test you in ways that will break your body and your spirit if you are not strong enough to withstand them. Yet for all its dangers, for all the suffering it inflicts on those who call it home, Icewind Dale endures. The settlements persist. The people survive. New generations are born and grow up knowing nothing but this harsh life, and they find in it a freedom and a purpose that softer lands cannot provide. They learn to value strength and courage not as abstract virtues, but as practical necessities for daily survival. They forge bonds of friendship and community that are as strong as the ice that covers their lakes, because they know that cooperation is the only way to survive in a land that is constantly trying to kill them. This is the legacy of Icewind Dale, a testament to the indomitable nature of mortal will, to the refusal to surrender even when all hope seems lost, to the stubborn determination to carve out a life in places where life should not be possible. The giants who once ruled here are gone, their empire reduced to ruins and legends. The wizards of Netheril, with all their power and knowledge, are dust and memory. Even the gods, mighty as they are, cannot completely break the spirit of those who have chosen to make Icewind Dale their home. And that is what you must take away from this journey through the frozen north. That this land, for all its harshness and all its dangers, has shaped some of the greatest heroes and most resilient communities in all of Faerun. From Brunner's Forge beneath Kelvin's cairn to Drist's cave on the mountain slopes, from the fishing docks of Targos to the mead halls of Good Mead, from the walls of Bryn Shander to the endless tundra where the regged tribes roam, Icewind Dale stands as proof that the human spirit and the spirits of all the peoples who have made this place their home cannot be conquered by mere circumstance. The story of Icewind Dale continues, and it will continue as long as there are those brave enough or foolish enough to venture north into the frozen wastes, to challenge the cold and the darkness, to face whatever new threats emerge from beneath the ice, or descend from the mountains, or rise from the forgotten depths. The Dale will test them, as it has tested all who came before, and some will fall, but others will rise to take their place, adding their own chapters to the legend. If you found value in this journey through the frozen history of Icewind Dale, if these tales of courage and survival in the face of overwhelming odds have moved you or inspired you or simply entertained you, then please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows me to continue exploring the deep lore of the realms, to uncover the stories that deserve to be told, and to share them with you in this relaxed, immersive style. Thank you for walking with me through the frozen north, for braving the cold and the darkness, for listening to the legends of Icewind Dale. Until next time, stay warm, stay safe, and may your own journeys, wherever they take you, be filled with the same courage and determination that defines the peoples of this remarkable, terrible, beautiful frozen land.